Hello and welcome to the Wine Enthusiast Podcast. You're serving your drinks culture and the people who drive it. I'm Ryan Grimm, magazine director here at Wine Enthusiast. So we just published our first ever Bubbles issue that's all about sparkling wine. It has features on Central Coast Sparkling, English Bubbles, Corpinat, Cava, Sec, Prosecco, and it also has a feature that lists our 40 favorite sparkling wines from around the world for $75 or less. We do a few of these big lists every year. We have Best Buys, Cellar Selections, Top 100 Wines of the Year. So this sparkling wine list is a brand new entry to the Wine Enthusiast Top List canon. In this global list of the top sparkling wines, there were 2 bottles from Oregon. Both of them are rosés, and they're from the producers Corollary and Lytle Barnett. I feel like there's been a lot of excitement around Oregon's sparkling lately. The state's making some of the best bubbles in the entire country, and a new nonprofit of Oregon sparkling wine producers called Method Oregon just launched. So it seemed like a great time to talk about Beaver State bubbles. I hit up Wine Enthusiast writer-at-large Michael Alberty, who reviews wines from Oregon for us, who was kind enough to swing by the podcast. Michael, thank you so much for being here.
It is fantastic to be here. Thank you.
So we're here to talk about Oregon sparkling wine. When people think about the top sparkling wine regions in the entire world, Oregon typically isn't on that short list. But I feel like now maybe it could be.
I think it should be on a short list because of a whole bunch of different things. One of them is that we get microclimates here in terms of warm enough days now to ripen fruit properly in most vintage years. A lot of years, producers here get the ability to pick when they want to. That didn't always used to be the case 10, 15, 20 years ago. The other thing too is that we get these cool nights in most of these, like particularly Willamette Valley, AVA areas. So you get the ability to get some ripeness in fruit, but you're not sacrificing natural acidity. And so people see the volcanic and sedimentary soils here, marine soils, and the combination of that and the weather and the opportunity to pick when they think they need to pick to get the acidity they need for the sparkling wine. I think you can see some world-class sparkling wines here. I think also too, people now they're getting more rigorous with their standards, as witnessed by this new program in Oregon. It's a voluntary association of Oregon traditional method producers called Method Oregon. And they are trying to develop standards that are very similar to what the French government does in Champagne. And so they are now, if you're going to put Method Oregon on the label, and I think there's 40 some producers now that are in the Method Oregon Association, you have to get all the fruit from an AVA within Oregon, whether it's the Willamette Valley and Columbia River or Southern Oregon. You've got to be 100% produced and finished, the wine finished in the state of Oregon. You've got to do organic, sustainable farming. They require a minimum of 2 years on the lees, and they are doing something the French don't do yet, at least, which is requiring a disgorgement date on the label, which if they can educate consumers properly, it'll help consumers kind of get an idea of what kind of style of sparkling wine they might be getting if they can interpret that disgorgement date on the bottle. So that's part of it. The other part of it is that there is the barriers to entry into the traditional sparkling wine market in Oregon significantly lowered a few years back. So it used to be that there could be some really talented winemakers in Oregon, but they were young, just starting out. They didn't have the capital to get the equipment that they needed to make traditional method sparkling wines. It was super expensive. And so you only saw a few producers doing sparkling wines, the ones that had that capital and had the ability to make those wines. But when we started getting companies like the Radiant Sparkling Wine Company and the Sparkling Wine Company, they would do all of the work for the winemakers. So just bring your stuff to the facility and they'll do the bottling, they'll do everything in the disgorgement. So they had the equipment and they had the ability to do it. And so putting together really talented winemakers with the equipment they needed to succeed with traditional sparkling wines really opened up the door. And so Gene Feldkamp and Dan Deephouse at Corollary Wines are a great example of that. They were in the tech industry down in California. They would come up, they were quote, enthusiastic consumers, unquote, of wines. They came up to visit the Willamette Valley and they looked around and they were fans of traditional method sparkling wine, huge fans. And they would see just a few people doing sparkling wines like Argyle, some of the bigger first initial founding fathers of founding parents of sparkling wines, but they didn't see many of them. So they thought, man, if we were going to get into the wine business, the niche would be coming up to Oregon and doing traditional method sparkling wines. So that's what they did. They joke about how they tried to talk themselves out of doing it, but they could never successfully talk themselves out of doing it. So they moved up to Oregon in 2017 and they launched Corollary Wines with their first harvest. But we're talking about young couple, really super smart couple, determined, energetic. They wanted to make just traditional sparkling wines. So the intention is there and they went for it. And boy, since the first time I tried one of their sparkling wines, Corollary is always one of those wineries. In fact, it's funny that those two wines ended up on the list that we're talking about today, because I always like make sure that if people ask me about Willamette Valley, Oregon sparkling wines to try for the first time, Corollary, I always call Corollary Electricity, and I always call Lytle Barnett Elegance. So they're two of my E's, and they are two of the ways that I think people get a great introduction to Willamette Valley and Oregon sparkling wines, even though styles are a little bit different. Gene and Dan, they're minimal intervention. They pick for like really brisk acidity. They can still get that ripeness of fruit like we were talking about earlier, but then they age all of their wines a minimum of 9 months in barrels and 30 months on the lees. And, not a lot of people were doing that combination. And so they get like laser beam precision with their wines. And I think that the rosé that made it onto the list is interesting to me because that one to me kind of has these the Momtazi Vineyard Carbonic rosé. It kind of has those dried rose petals and strawberry. I'm going to say this, for me, this is a real positive thing to say. Strawberry bubblegum with the white powder intact. So you kind of get that chewing gum, but you get that white kind of sugar coated powder a little bit. And it kind of, the texture, it kind of tiptoes up to the edge of creaminess. So compared to a lot of their other wines, it has a little bit more of that almost creamy texture. I love that rosé, and it looks beautiful in the glass too. And then for some of their other wines, the one we talked about, laser beam precision of acidity, they make a Blanc de Blanc with Chardonnay from the Ex Omni vineyard, and their Ex Omni Blanc de Blanc is for me one of the, year in year out, one of the best sparkling wines I get to taste. It's got that saline quality, like a sea breeze combined with a freshly shucked oyster shell lining. It gets tangy citrus, lemon and things like that, and just a little bit of brioche to it. So those wines, a wide range of wines with Corollary, but those guys, man, they are intense and intentional, and so they end up with some really good wines. So it didn't surprise me when we do blind tastings, when I see those scores for their wines. It doesn't surprise me it made it onto our sparkling wine list. That rosé is pretty exciting.
And those prices, I mean, compared to some regions like Champagne or elsewhere, prices,
Mhm.
I mean, these are reasonably priced, excellent bottles.
Yeah, yeah, and I think too what helps in that regard is that there's more wines being made, economy of scale with some of these companies that are getting bigger and bigger and more options. So you can do a little bit better with pricing, but it kind of ties into the conversations people have when they ask me. They said, "Well, it's you get this with every wine, and it's not just sparkling wine, but people will look at me and go, $75 for a Willamette Valley sparkling wine I could buy," and then they fill in the blank with X champagne that they could buy from France for the same price. I'm like, if that's your only criterion, then yeah, I mean, maybe you should always buy that French champagne. But if you want to try something that's unique, it's Oregon. Everybody likes to compare the Willamette Valley Pinot Noir to Burgundy and Willamette Valley Chardonnay to Burgundy, but this is its own thing in terms of terroir.
Yeah, I was gonna ask too, to the average person who maybe is not drinking a ton of Oregon sparkling, how would you say it separates itself from, champagne, or even if they're more familiar with prosecco or other sparkling wines?
Okay, so there are some sparkling wines like with these two wines we're talking on the list with Lytle Barnett and Corollary. We're talking about traditional method wines. There's a wide variety of sparkling wines being made here, so you do get to see wines that may be more similar to prosecco that might have a little bit of a lemon, kind of a powdered sugar kind of quality to go with it. And you see a lot of other methods besides traditional. So you're seeing a wide range of price ranges. So you're seeing pet nats, you're seeing forced carbonation wines, and you're seeing a lot of wines in the marketplace that are quote sparkling that may not be traditional method. And this category for Oregon is really interesting because while California and Washington, and I'll show my hands to indicate, while their sales have tended in the current marketplace to be going down a little bit, or a significant amount in some cases, Oregon kind of plateaued off. It wasn't that they didn't get the growth they wanted, but they were going down a little bit, but flattening. But sparkling wine sales from Oregon have been consistently going up. And I'm just sitting there going, in this marketplace with all of the challenges that we face between the World Health Organization and health and all this other stuff and all the competing factors like hard seltzers and CBD infused beverages, the fact that you've got a category that's going up significantly, that should tell you something about how the marketplace is reacting to these wines. So whether they're reacting to them for the quality on its own sake, or they're thinking this is an alternative to champagne with tariff prices going crazy, I don't know, but you can just see that people are buying these wines and drinking them.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like production for this sector of Oregon wine will increase in the future? I mean, compared to, say, California sparkling, it's a tiny, tiny fraction in terms
Right.
of how many cases they're putting out every year, but do you see it as a growth sector for the state?
I do. I mean, I can't predict the future. Something strange could happen tomorrow, but I don't see any reason why this growth in the sparkling wine market in Oregon should go down at all. I would not be surprised to continue to see increases from year to year. Now, whether they're as significant as the last couple of years where things have almost doubled, I don't know. But I see this as a real bright spot within the Oregon wine industry, and so do those members of like Method Oregon too. They see this as a real opportunity to educate consumers about things like disgorgement dates and what extended lease means, and they see it as an opportunity to raise the level of the brand profile in the entire state because we've got significantly world-class sparkling wines being made in Southern Oregon, out in the Columbia River Gorge. People tend to focus on the Willamette Valley, but Method Oregon includes all of those areas with their producers. So I see Method Oregon as going out there and like grabbing some attention and grabbing people by the collar and saying, "Hey, there's some great traditional method sparkling wine being made here. It needs to be in the discussion." People are kind of reluctant to say, "Yeah, we're making stuff that you should talk about in the same conversation as champagne." Others are like, "Yes, we should be in the conversation with champagne. What we're doing in Oregon is good, and it needs to be recognized as being in the conversation with the best sparkling wines in the world."
Do a lot of these producers like the champagne comparison? Because I feel like you talk to sparkling producers around the world and other countries, they don't like that. They don't like how there's always this kinda, like, binary setup, where they're being compared to champagne.
Yeah. It just depends on who you talk to. So like when we did that article for Wine Enthusiast Digital about Method Oregon, some producers were like, "Nope, I don't even want to talk about it. It's just pointless. We are our own thing. Oregon is Oregon, Champagne is Champagne." And other people were like, "Yes, absolutely. Like I drink some of the producers said, I drink sparkling wine all the time, both the ones we make here in Oregon and the ones we make in Champagne. And I have no problem talking about what I'm doing in comparison to what they're doing in Champagne." And some people even point to the climate challenges Champagne faces to indicate that maybe down the road, Oregon might have some advantages in terms of climate over what's going on in Champagne with weather. So, yeah, some people will talk about it. Some people embrace it. Some people will craftily say it is the bar of measurement. So why wouldn't we talk about it? Why wouldn't we compare ourselves? Because that's for me personally as a producer, the bar that which I'm trying to get to with sparkling wine, traditional method sparkling wine. So yeah, why not talk about it? But I don't think anybody's crazy to talk about a comparison between champagne and what's going on in Oregon. Not at all.
Yeah. Yeah, so, well, Lytle Barnett and Corollary, these bottles on the list are about 70-75. Are there are a lot of producers in the state that are kind of increasing their production, but kind of going after a lower price point to compete with kind of the more accessible Proseccos that are,
Yeah.
15, 20, $25. Like, what are some of those wines that you would recommend?
Cho Winery makes some sparkling wines that are in that $30 price range. Part of the increase in production in this state, and I haven't had time to pin it down yet to see what the breakdown is, but part of it is this increase in sparkling wine production is because we have so many people that are now making forced carbonation sparkling wines that are in cans, right? So you've got like Union Wine Company, you've got Oregon Sparkling Wine. I mean, you can go into a grocery store in Oregon, and I'm assuming it might be the same other places in the country where these people distribute. But you can go to the grocery store and you can get a can of sparkling Pinot Noir for like $8 and put a straw in it on a hot summer day. You're out at the park, at the beach. That's an accessible way to get people drinking sparkling wine. And the sparkling wines are, decent. They're, for 7, $8. I'd quaff those at an outdoor zoo music concert all the time. Yeah. So it's the same thing with any wine. It's the same thing Pinot Noir face, which is how do we get people drinking Pinot Noir? And it's the same thing with sparkling wine. What's a great way to introduce people to sparkling wine? Some of those canned beverages are a pretty good introduction for people. Kramer Vineyards out in Gaston, Oregon, make some really nice sparkling wines and different methods that are like super reasonably priced in that 25, $35 price range. So the good thing about what I see in Oregon sparkling wine is that it's not all 70 to $100 bottles of sparkling wine. You've got 70, 75 for sure. But you also see people that are doing $35 and $40 traditional method sparkling wines or alternative methods of sparkling wine. So sparkling wine right now, we seem to be awash in it. Whatever the technique is in Oregon, you see sparkling wine everywhere. Winery lists now have more sparkling wines than I've ever seen before, locally produced. Grocery stores, traditional retail stores, it's doing really well at all the different price points.
Yeah, I feel like younger drinkers and also people who are just kind of beginning to get into wine, it's a really nice way for people to start enjoying it if they don't really have a whole lot of experience with wine. And I feel like that Oregon Sparkling could really kind of fit into that growth, to kind of reach people who are just kind of starting their wine journey.
Yeah, it's a festive and celebratory thing, and I think that a lot of the younger drinking markets that are now more tied to consuming alcohol, wine, whatever, in social settings where they're with groups of people doing it more with shared food, shared company kind of situations, as opposed to just grabbing a bottle and going out in the car and, quote, getting your drink on, unquote. I think there's more of this like thoughtful consumption experience going on. And sparkling is just like, who doesn't get happy when bubbles hit your palate? So that doesn't surprise me at all. I had a conversation when I was in Idaho. I had a conversation with a winemaker, and I haven't pinned this down yet either. But there's this thought that some people in the younger markets that are drinking sparkling wines, that some people that drink sparkling wines may be associating a improved health situation. They somehow perceive this as being healthier, quote unquote, for them than drinking a big, heavy red wine. I don't know what the motivations for people to drink these are, but that's a theory that I might be worth testing. 12.5% alcohol. Some of these other formats of sparkling wines are, 10% alcohol. So I don't know if that's playing into it or not. I don't know if it's the fact that it's sparkling in the glass. So it's like a lot of hard seltzers you see in the glass. I have no idea, but something's going on out there with sparkling wines. It's not just all of us old people drinking them, for sure.
Mm. So I want to get into some of the grape varieties. I know the Lytle Barnett is Pinot and Chardonnay. Are there any other varieties that producers are experimenting with for sparkling in the state?
Yeah, first you mentioned Lytle Barnett, so they're the ones I put in my elegance category. So I just want to say something about them for a second because they're really interesting. They are like a power trio superstar team of sparkling winemaking. You've got Andy Lytle, who's got a long background with his family business and stuff, and him working for Jackson Family too. But he has a long background in wine and beer distribution. Spent his formative years, I think, in Southern Oregon, but he teamed up with Anthony Beck of Graham Beck fame in South Africa to do the Lytle Barnett project. And so they didn't want to confuse people by calling it Lytle Beck since there was already a Graham Beck. So I think Barnett is Anthony Beck's mother's maiden name. And so that's why it's Lytle-Barnett. And then they've got, so you've got somebody from South Africa with a long experience with making sparkling wine. And then you've got Andrew Davis, who's their director of winemaking. He was the founder of Radiant Sparkling Wine Company. So he's kind of like the local sparkling wine maven that helped project Willamette Valley and Oregon sparkling wines up the chain by starting Radiant so people could afford to start making sparkling wines when they couldn't before. So you put the three of them together and you've got like a cream power trio like of sparkling wine producers. And they only do vintage, they do vintage only traditional method sparkling wines. They age a minimum of 5 years in bottle before they release. So they're like holding on to bottles before they come out and hit the market. So yeah, they're Pinot Noir and Chardonnay for that rosé. But the beauty of Oregon now is that because the capital barrier to entry is lowered, you are seeing anything in a grape variety that people think are interesting to them to make sparkling wines with. So, um, sparkling, you name the grape, and it's pretty much out there. So, if you want to go find a sparkling Aligoté, pretty confident you could go find one. Sparkling Sauvignon Blanc, yes. Sparkling Gamay Noir, yes. Sparkling Cool Climate Syrah from the Oregon side of the border, yes. So it's not just all Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, especially when you look at those other methods like forced carbonation and pet nats and ancestral stuff. You see a wide variety of grapes. And it matured faster than it should have, but it was because of those bottling companies that came around that allowed all of the young folks up and coming winemakers that wanted to experiment, but they didn't want to do just like with Pinot Noir. They didn't want to do Pinot Noir and Chardonnay because everybody's doing that for sparkling wine. So they wanted to start doing some sparkling wines with some of these other grapes. So yeah, you see that all the time here now.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask about other producers too, because Lytle Barnett and Corollary both made the list. This list was our first ever, top sparkling list of this sort, and it was capped to $75. Are there other producers in the state that are tend to, their bottles tend to be, more expensive than that you would recommend for maybe a special occasion that wouldn't make a list of $75 or less?
I know that Rollin Souls, known from his early career at Argyle, but now with Rocco Winery, which he and his wife are still involved in, even after the sale to the Santa Margarita folks. They make some extended tirage wines that, well, one of them was our Wine Enthusiast Wine of the Year a couple of years ago. And so that would be a wine that I would look to, their RMS extended tirage program. You get Tony Soder, you get Soder sparkling wines that would fit in that category that you just described with maybe a little bit more expensive special occasion, even though they do make wines in a wide variety of price ranges for the traditional method. But yeah, who else? Domaine Serene sparkling wine, their traditional method wine would fit in that category. Some things being done in Southern Oregon by Irvine Roberts Winery down in Ashland would fit into that category. Yeah, let me think if there's any. I think those would be the ones that would jump off the top of my head. Saint Innocent. Oh yeah. So you've got Argyle, which is considered like one of the founding, wineries for sparkling wine in the valley. But Saint Innocent would be another one I would look at. I'm thinking in my head, I'm walking through the Willamette Valley. I think that would be a pretty good list of places to start. I'm sure I'm going to leave somebody out. I'm sure somebody's going to yell at me, but that's okay.
We can maybe put it in the story. I wanted to talk to you about this because I really like this topic because there's so much positivity around it. It seems to be a bright spot, in the American wine industry, and so many headlines you see aren't always so rosy. So I really like the fact that there's like the numbers seem to be pretty good. Like I think this is a nice
Yeah.
it's a nice story for the country.
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen anything quite like this in terms of the way that it's growing so quickly as a market now. When that's going to level off, who knows? But right now, it's just like that is like one of the first things when I meet somebody like out on the road, like when I was just in Idaho. It's like one of the first things people ask me about was like, tell me more about what's the sparkling wines. I saw the stories about Method Oregon, but are they really that good? Tell me more. That's Sparkling wine is usually one of the first things people ask me about, and it always used to be still Pinot Noir or Chardonnay, and now sparkling wine is, is the first thing. Maybe it's because it's the newest thing around, and it's getting a lot of attention, but I think it's here to stay. The quality's of these traditional method wines in Oregon speak for themselves. So that will definitely be here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's just changing the reputation of the whole state, you know?
Yeah, and I I can't wait. So like every summer, the Method Oregon people now do this annual tasting event where they spread it over 3 days. They hold it at multiple locations. I heard last year's was just a tremendous success and quite the party. And I can't wait to go to this one this summer and see it in action in July. I should also probably point out too that in terms of when I recommend sparkling wines when people show up to Oregon to try, one of them would be Willamette Valley Vineyards. They've got so Jim Burnett and his outfit have a domain Willamette out in wine country, and it's dedicated to sparkling wine production only. And it is a glorious place to visit. I feel like I'm in a WPA War Project ski lodge when I'm in there. It's a really great place to sit and sip sparkling wines. They've got the cavs underneath. You can take a tour and all that kind of stuff. So the commitment, when people ask me about sparkling wine, is Oregon really committed to it? And I just look at things like Domaine Willamette and the amount of money that went into establishing that. I look into all of these sparkling wine bottling companies that now exist, and I said the proof is in the eating of the pudding. It's like people are putting their money where their mouth is about sparkling wine, and I look at that as a real positive sign. So yeah, if you I think we're becoming a sparkling wine destination point for some people. The folks at Corollary, Gene and Dan, tell me they see people in their tasting room all the time that tell them we've come here to visit wineries to taste sparkling wines because we've been reading so much about it.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they're seeing it as a tourist destination thing. And I think that's only going to build in the future too. Because I mean, spring, summer, nice weather, standing outdoors, flowing dresses and sipping sparkling wine. I could see how this is going to be a great attraction down the road.
Are there more and more producers that are exclusively sparkling wine and are not making still wines?
More than there were. I would have to sit down and think of the list of people that are doing only sparkling wines. I know that when Dan and Jean showed up here, the first time I tried their sparkling wines, I was sitting there thinking, boy, they seem really savvy about what they're doing. I hope they're going to make it. And that was when I first tried the very first wines. I no longer have that concern about whether they're going to make it. But I thought it was at the time challenging, potentially a little bit risky to do sparkling wine only. But no, I don't think they are the only ones doing exclusively sparkling wine.
Yeah. And I would imagine there's more that for years and years were not making sparkling wine that are now kind of getting into it, given all the enthusiasm around it.
Well, part of the challenge, and this is what kind of gave pause initially, they had to think about it. But if you're going to do only sparkling wine, so like when Dan and Jean came up here in 2017, their first harvest was 2017, and given their regimen for aging things, that means you've got to hang out for a year or two with nothing to sell until you can sell your first wines. And they are better people than me because that would flip me out. I don't know if I could hang around for 2 to 3 years waiting to sell my first batch of sparkling wines. So that probably gives pause to some people for not doing exclusively sparkling wines. But they stuck to it and they made it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all I got. Thank you for your time today. This was great.
I think it's Friday, right? I should have had sparkling wine ready to go, but I'll have to go find one.
And that about does it for this episode. If you're still thirsty for more bubbles, check out the top 40 sparkling wines list on wineenthusiast.com and the Bubbles issue of Wine Enthusiast magazine. You can also read Michael's story on Method Oregon on our website. Email us your comments and questions at podcast@wineenthusiast.com. Subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to your favorite shows. You can also go to wineenthusiast.com/podcast for more episodes and transcripts. I'm Ryan Grimm. Thanks for listening.